The gentlelady yields. I apologize for a brief absence. I have another committee that a bill got called up right at the worst time that I had to go present. But I think a couple of points of clarification. The Capitol breach began well before the people at the White House made it down to the Capitol. The gallows were actually erected at 6 o'clock in the morning, and no one knew exactly what Mike Pence was going to do until about 1:30 in the afternoon. These are just some of the questions of the narrative that came out from the January 6th report, which is this much. This is how much is discussed about the D.C. National Guard. The primary objective of the Select Committee was to investigate the security failure at the U.S. Capitol, because we have to identify the failures before we can fix things. There was an entire team, the blue team, who was commissioned with doing that. I challenge anyone to look in here and find anything of substance from the blue team whatsoever. So this is why it's important that we do the oversight that is the job of Congress, and specifically the subcommittee, to look into what happened. This is clearly within the security failure of the Capitol. This should not be political. This should not be biased in one way or the other. Regardless of who was coming to the Capitol, regardless of who broke into the Capitol, that should have never happened. There should have been no breach of this Capitol. The resources are here, and the idea that the New Jersey National Guard would get here before our own National Guardsmen, whose job is to, as Colonel Matthews said, riot control, traffic control. This is their job, to come in and help defend this Capitol. And so, with that, I do have a few questions here. The DOD-IG report alleges that DOD officials did not delay or obstruct a response to the Capitol. Sergeant Major Brooks, I'll start with you. Do you believe that the deployment of the D.C. National Guard was delayed?
Yes.
Who do you believe delayed it?
Secretary McCarthy and senior officials in the Army staff.
Okay, why do you believe that they delayed it?
I believe their misunderstanding of the capabilities of D.C. National Guard and the seriousness of the situation, to be honestly, I have no idea why we never received that order. All I know is that they were more concerned with what it would look like with soldiers with the Capitol in the background than protecting the Capitol of the United States.
Colonel Matthews, same question for you. Do you believe that deployment of the D.C. National Guard was delayed?
Yes, sir. I believe that it was a result of an overcautious, reluctant, hesitant, facilitating leadership. And I think they were concerned about the optics, the political optics of a military presence here. And I don't think they trusted the commander-in-chief. And I think that was because of our senior-ranking military officer who was making disparaging remarks about the president to them. You got to remember, the people who ran the Army are very close associates of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. They owed this position. They owed their positions to him, and he was not. I mean, there are books about how Chairman Milley was impeding the ability of the president. So I think that was an issue there, sir. So
just to clarify, you think that there was a delay that was calculated for one reason or the other, but you're not indicating that there was a nefarious purpose in that. Just so we don't walk out of here with conspiracy theories that the DOD wanted the Capitol to fail. I just want to make sure that that's not where you're going with that.
I'm not going with that, sir. I'm saying that the conditions were set by this talk of a coup, of a Reichstag moment. I mean, the idea that I mean. Let me be frank about it. A bunch of black kids in the D.C. Guard are going to usurp the election for Trump. It's crazy, but that's what they were talking about. I mean, and it's crazy talk, and it was out there, and it's in books. I mean, Milley's talked about it.
Well, I've got you, Colonel Matthews. Do you believe the DOD-IG report accurately reflects the events of January 6, 2021?
That DOD-IG report is replete with incorrect information, false information. Even the Select Committee's report has shown that. And can I give you a couple of examples, please?
Sure.
it says at 16:35, Ryan McCarthy called General Walker and directed him to go to the Capitol. Now, McCarthy, if you read his transcript from the Select Committee, he said he never did that. He was getting ready for a news conference. He was taking notes and writing, so preparing for a televised news conference. And he overheard Brigadier General Leneve direct General Walker to go, but General Leneve says he never told General Walker to go. He never gave a go order. So they do like this. They point in each other's directions and say, but the DODIG puts it in, then they claim that they had to call Walker again at 1700, like 25 minutes later, and direct him to go. That's an absolute falsehood. McCarthy was in a televised press conference. Mr. Storch, the DOD Inspector General, has an obligation to correct the record for, I mean, where does he go, where does General Walker go to get his reputation back? I mean, you smeared this man by anonymous sources, and we're talking about general officers in the Army who were bitter because of Walker's testimony in March before the Senate. They didn't like that, and they wanted to get General Pyatt promoted to general. And so they wanted to take down Walker. Even General Milley engages in that. General Milley engages in that if you read his transcript, sir, from the Select Committee, he implies Walker was lying or exaggerating. And everything General Milley says in his transcribed interview from the committee is incorrect, and the committee staff had to know it.
So let me just clarify something here. General Walker did testify under oath to the Select Committee, is that correct?
Correct, yes, he did.
The implication of the DODIG report is that General Walker falsely testified. Is that fair?
To the Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee and to the Senate Rules Committee. He testified in March. In March of 2021, the DODIG report came out in November of 2021, and the implication was that he was not truthful in his testimony.
So,
and this is a sitting officer of the Congress of the United States appointed by Speaker Pelosi, a sworn career federal law enforcement executive and the Major General of the United States Army. And they were implying that he committed outright perjury on live television.
so
And I took exception to that. You know, I wrote my memo, sir. I wasn't working for General Walker. I had nothing to gain from that, but it was the right thing to do. This man was responsible for all of your personal safety. He was smeared by it, and I just
okay. Let me reclaim my time. There's other questions I need to get to, but I just wanted to make sure that you understand that the implications of the DODIG report is that General Walker falsified testimony or was not truthful. Would you believe that he would be selected to be the head security officer of the House of Representatives by Nancy Pelosi if it was known that he had lied under oath? Okay, I just want to make sure we're talking about someone who was selected by my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to be the sergeant at arms here. I'm just getting to the point. This is a bipartisan issue that we're talking about here. Let me move on real quickly. Captain Nick, the DODIG states they received a copy of contemporaneous notes from Secretary McCarthy's aide-de-camp from January 6, 2021. Did the DODIG request a copy of your notes that day?
No.
They did not ask for your notes?
I never spoke to anybody at the Department of Defense IG's office, and they never requested my notes, and they never contacted me.
No. Okay, interesting. I'll do a couple more questions and we'll continue down the aisle. The DODIG report alleges that on in June of 2020, that June 2020 taught Secretary McCarthy that he could not simply rely on the DC National Guard to figure out the details. General Dean, what do you make of that statement?
I think that he's unfamiliar with what the DC National Guard can actually do and its true capability. So I think he's probably being advised by senior active component officers that have never spent a day in their life in the National Guard. And they're advising him on what the National Guard should or shouldn't do. It's like a surface warfare officer in the Navy talking about a submariner. You're in the same service, but you do different things. Right. And so I think part of the issue is taking military advice from a senior active component officer about National Guard issues pertaining to civil disturbance or domestic response. I think it's out of their wheelhouse, and I think sometimes they can provide inaccurate information. And in doing so, it creates this lack of trust because now you don't know who to believe. You don't know whether to believe the people that are actually supposed to advise you on military matters or the National Guard. But I would propose to you that you need somebody to advise you on Army and Air Force National Guard matters, not just military matters, if you want to get to the truth.
Okay, thank you. Sergeant Major Brooks, same question, but let me proceed that with, there were a lot of acts of violence, riots throughout the country during 2020. We had that in Georgia. As a response to the riots in Atlanta, the governor of Georgia called out the State Patrol and the Georgia National Guard. No one raised an issue with that because that is a job of the National Guard to respond to the governor and provide for civil disturbance and support and riot control. Is really the same question I did to General Dean. Is that not understood by certain DOD officials that ultimately that is the same role as the DC National Guard, it's just the chain of command is differently since DC is not a state?
Yes, sir. The DC National Guard is unique in that aspect. In fact, there are actual DC code that gives special authorities to the DC National Guard that no other National Guard in the country have to conduct business within the district and conduct law enforcement operations in support of, federal or district agencies. I believe that General Dean is absolutely accurate. I asked the question, where was the Chief of the National Guard Bureau in this when you were discussing Guard capabilities? You were only asking active duty military who had never served in the Guard, did not truly understand capabilities and authorities, and at no time you reached out to the 4-star general in charge of the National Guard to get information. Although you had all the information necessary if you just understood the role that had been delegated to you many months or even years prior to. I think it is incredibly important going forward that the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of the Army, the Chief of Staff of the Army, to include the Sergeant Major of the Army, are thoroughly briefed on the authorities, capabilities, and their responsibility that has been delegated to them over the DC National Guard and its ability to respond to the nation's capital. We thoroughly train on our ability to be a reserve force for the active component. Why does the active component not thoroughly train on us?